Hi, everybody. I am Holly Celiano, and I have John Dowling here today. Welcome, John.
Thank you, my dear. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. So I know there's a lot of buzz going on in the global world. There is a lot of talk about Iraq. Why don't we dive into that first with what's going on? I know you put out a post that the HCL was done.
Mhm.
And then I'm reading today that there was a quorum and that they didn't have everything that they needed, so nothing is completed. So, what do you say about that?
I think there's a lot of disinformation to throw people off because they know people are watching now. I think it's all been done, and this is just moves and counter moves. What we're really waiting for at this point is just for the Gazette to post it. And for those who are not familiar, that's like the equivalent of our federal registry when we do an executive order. It's what has to go in their legal paper document to make it official. And I was told this morning that they historically do it usually Monday to Wednesday. So we're watching this week to see how that goes down. I can share with you my screen if you like, and I can show
Sure.
you a couple of things here. And oops, that isn't what I wanted to show you. So let me get out of that. Sorry about that. A lot of different screens open here. Yeah, let's go over to this. Here we go. And this is a post from Ronaldo JC on X. And as he says, Iraq's about kabuki theater with parliament budget this week. Disinformation. We just talked about keeping the investor confused as waiting for the CBI to make their move with the Iraq dinar rate in order for everything else to get passed with the new figures. Iraq reported through the Gazette the new law allowing them to go digital internationally. Parliament has no control nor authority to change the rate. Once the CBI or Sudani announces the new rate change, the first place to go look will be the CBI.IQ. So when people say, where do I go to look for it? Typically, the first default is Forex, but you can actually start here. Remember, Iraq cannot tell us when they plan on releasing the new rate as it's illegal to do so, insider trading. All we can do is wait for to study investment. Don't get too heavily emotionally involved and just wait for the rate change, which of course I think most people know, but we need to, specify that. And then we have this one here. I don't know if you can see, I switched over to Majid. You
Mhm.
see that? Okay. So the letter I posted today from Parliament saying the 3-year budget HCL approved became a law, had this picture with it. The law shall take effect from the date of its publication in the official Gazette. It is done. Wait until it is published on the Gazette Golden Age. So it goes back to
So,
the.
speaking of Majid, since you have that up, he's just recently come on the scene pretty strong. He was never around prior, a couple of months prior.
Mhm.
He's out there posting nonstop. What
Uh-huh.
does your team know about him? Do you know anything about him?
Oh, that's a good question, Holly. It's a bit of a trap question because our team does have a suspicion of who it is, but we're not going to say because we don't want to
Tip
put it
your
out.
hat.
Well, if we put it out there, we're just concerned, honestly, that they might stop posting, and we don't want to
Okay.
upset the apple cart. I'm just being very honest, East Coast, and
Okay.
not going to lie to you about it. We do have our suspicions about who it is, somebody that has been around for quite a while, because you have to with this kind of knowledge. It's too specific to be random. So I'm going to hold back on who we think it is.
Okay.
But we do have an idea of who it might be,
Okay.
and I
We'll
imagine.
talk. We'll talk offline.
Sure, sure. Thank you for asking,
Okay.
though. That's a fair question. You're doing a good job investigative journalistically to ask that. So,
Yes.
but it's a fair question because it's so specific information. It's not somebody who just came on the scene yesterday.
Correct. He is very specific. He's very pumped up. He's very dialed in. And
Mhm.
it's a new name that's been out there. So it's just got a lot of people wondering, who is that?
Exactly, and it's a fair question. So,
Right.
okay, so let me see if I can do this. Let me see. Are you seeing the silver part now?
No,
Okay, let me
I'll have the
see.
Majid.
Okay, let me start again and I will go to that where you can see it. Sometimes I have to refresh the screen. You should see it now.
Yes.
So this came out of this morning. Silver broke out of a technical squeeze pattern today. That's why it's going up. As I look at it now, at the moment, silver is $32.46. So it's breaking off of that neckline. It's breaking away slowly. I just had Andy Scheckman on last week from Miles Franklin, and we were talking about this, and he was saying that they can't make it short this stuff anymore. And part of it is because people like you and I in our communities, and rightly so, are buying silver and gold or trace amounts of gold or copper, and that's shorting their balance sheets, which means they can't paper it down, as you know, anymore. So also, you've got XRP moving up, you've got XLM, which is backed by silver. So that's going to, in essence, break it out. So that's good. I mean, we're going to start climbing out of that holding pattern, and we should see it, I think, move up pretty nicely by the end of this year into next year.
So I'm going to dial back to Iraq. Um,
Sure.
there's there's a lot of buzz out this past week that there's lower denoms out. Um, what do you say about that? What do your team? Do you have any boots on the ground to confirm that there are the lower denoms, or do you agree with the news that they're out?
So I would say this: if I can't absolutely confirm it, I would say that, right? But I would say this, and this is an important question you asked because it involves subtext. When you look, and you know, Holly, you've been in this longer than I have, so you can substantiate this. When you look at the HCL, the reason that's so important, and I'm not deviating from your question, I'm adding to it my own way. When you look at the HCL on its face, right, it's so important to get the Kurdistan, who holds the 17% of the block of the factions in Iraq, paid, right? That's now been achieved. What you have to realize studying this blessing investment is there's 150 laws underneath the HCL that are affected by that law, right? And one of them is the lower denominations in small notes and coins. So by de facto of the HCL law being passed and now just waiting to inevitably be announced in the Gazette, right, through whoever gets to it, we'll all know when we see it. You ostensibly address the lower denoms and small notes and coins because that's part of a subset of laws within HCL. So I would say based on that, that it's more accurate than not. And now we just wait to see how it unfolds.
Okay. All right. Still staying on Iraq.
Okay.
So they tend to report things after they've already happened, is
Right.
what we see.
Sure.
So does your team believe the actually passed everything, all of their laws, or are there a couple of straggling laws that need to be voted on?
I think it's all been done, to be honest with you, a while ago. I think this is all optics and narrative playing itself out. Again, moves and counter moves. I think
Mhm.
it's already been done. I don't think there's anything really hanging out there. I think they're being told when to push the button, and I mean that's above our pay grade, right? But so I think the short answer is it's all been done, and we're just waiting for the button, proverbially speaking, to be pushed. And
Right.
you got to remember, Holly, that Sudani said at the beginning of this year, as you know, that the currency auctions had to be addressed before the end of the year, right? So what you have to look at is the fact that, and when they stop the daily currency auctions, most countries have a weekly currency auction. That's not unusual, but daily is bad because that means you're money laundering the dollar and making the citizens live on the dollar, and Parliament can money launder through that. By cutting that off, that forces everybody to start working with the dinar and having to diversify how Iraq makes money beyond oil revenues and distributing those oil revenues as basically a de facto pension to the citizens of Iraq, like the Kurdistan region. So for that reason, we think it's pretty much done. It's just a matter of who pushes the button and the timing of it. And that's obviously not in our control.
Right. So moving along, we know
Mhm.
that Trump was in France this weekend, and that was a big deal. And everybody's reporting he was there for more than just the opening of Notre Dame Cathedral.
Right.
Um, you could see by a lot of the pictures, Macron was not very happy at all. Um, and I'm sure there was a lot of negotiations going on behind the scenes that we're not privy to exactly what's going on, but there's definitely more going on than that.
Yep.
So we see France, South Korea, Syria. They just had their leader be ousted. And I'm getting reports that Germany also is being reported. So it seems like there's several countries that are collapsing, and maybe that's they're switching their financial system as they collapse to the new system.
Mhm.
What are your thoughts on that?
So it's a loaded discussion. So we have to break it down, of course, like we normally do. And I'll ask you the same question that I'm answering. Uh, First and foremost, yes, what was going on this weekend with Notre Dame was much more significant than people think. You have the Trump gold tie, signaling the gold back standard, golden age. You have the bells that I don't think a lot of people are talking about, right? Rebel, rebel. Bells have frequencies, healing frequency patterns that were suppressed from us. So there's an element of Nassar Jassar in that. There's an element of the healing technologies. It's a resetting of everything that I think we can read inside of that. And I'm not even sure that was the real Macron, quite frankly. So
Right.
that's a whole other subject, but I'm just breaking it down in subfolders for you on your question. As far as the Assad thing, you saw they said the plane went down, and then you see him in Russia trying to work with them. That would, to me, would signal that he's been kicked out of his own government and the governments are restructuring. That's very important for Iraq because that allows Iraq to break up the Iranian corrupt proxies within Iraq. We've talked about in the green zone, right? But also you could read into it and thinking potentially that maybe Assad meeting with Putin is a way to get into the BRICS, to seek refuge, if you like. So I think there's a lot of um, sub points and details that we can look at that contribute to the overall tenor of the nations within BRICS becoming nationalized, and of course, ultimately benefiting Iraq. And I know you didn't ask this question, but I think it's noteworthy to mention that Vietnam, we talked about this, I think, on our last podcast. If you remember August of 2020, during the downtime, you had Trump and Pompeo initiate the Indo-Asia Pacific Summit for $1 trillion Fed dollars put into Vietnam. And now you see last week, Zero Hedge reported that the Treasury for Vietnam sold over 1 trillion dong. So that's a massive amount. I just see personally, our team, myself, sees parallels inside of that. When you speak of nations, that's one that obviously we need to be paying attention to closely as well. So I hope that addresses some of your question.
Yes, there was reports this past week that Vietnam had done a revaluation in country. I don't know if you saw that, but
Yeah,
maybe that ties into the within the currency that you just mentioned within Vietnam having something to do with that.
I think they're all getting in position, Holly. I mean, that's the whole thing. Everything's aligning to a center point. This just came out. Gentleman, I've seen him a few times. Tom Seeloff, a big deal for the people of Iraq. Sudani mentions in Victory Anniversary, terrorism no longer has a foothold in Iraq, and I think that kind of ties back to the Syrian Assad stuff. You see Israel starting to gain ground in away from Hezbollah now into Syria, which would lead me to think that they're getting ready to deal with Iran again optically. And I think a lot of these things have already been done and they have to play out in optically in real time in such a fashion to create puzzle pieces for those who have no idea what's going on.
Mhm. Why is it with these countries, it seems like Telegram channels are the only ones really reporting this? It's not really so much in mainstream. It's more, there's more buzz on the back screen with all these countries than you see in mainstream. I know that was a question from somebody that follows you.
Mm-hmm.
If you have an answer for that.
Well, I mean, again, we know that. Okay, we know that President Trump has been running the show from the entire time. I'm sure you've seen the reports that he's been running things, kind of surreptitiously in the White House the whole time, right? There are many points of helicopters coming up and down when nobody was seen there for quite a time, and all of a sudden after Trump wins optically in November, you're seeing an uptick, right? So a lot of the stuff you have to try to read in between the lines. I can only speculate to the best that I can as far as why that is. But I think that as you're seeing a lot of resignations of a lot of media people, there was that gentleman on NBC, his name escapes me, but he stepped down after 50 years. So you're seeing a lot of these journalists stepping away from the mainstream. So I would just, in layman's terms, chalk that up to a changing of the guard of
Right.
the fake news is being sort of decoupled, right, or drained, and you will start to see, I think, in the new year at some point. I don't know if it'll be right out of the gate, but you will start to see little by little they'll be sort of forced to tell the truth. Our understanding is the military has been kind of giving them little comms of what to say and not to say, but it's not overly surprising to me that the truther community is telling the truth and the fake news is not. I mean, that's why they've been deemed by Trump as the fake news. So I don't really know how much more I can elaborate on other than to say that we are the news now, and that we're just doing our part, even if the people who are supposed to are not.
So let's dive into XRP and XLM because they have been climbing
Yep.
past couple of weeks. They broke their threshold, and that's been quite exciting. We expect those to climb in double digits when the currency exchange happens, and then take off even monumental from there. What do
Yeah,
you have to say about that for anybody that's not already purchased any of the cryptocurrencies? Now, still, even though it's climbed and it hit an all-time high, it's still a good time to buy.
absolutely. Just like precious metals, it's the same thing because they're interlocked. XRP
Mhm.
is pegged or backed by gold. You've got XLM, which is silver, XTC, which is copper. We've talked about before. So it's definitely a buying opportunity at all points, especially before the new SEC chair comes in, Trump comes in. It's just going to it's going to do nothing but climb. We expect it to go easily over $3 before the end of this year. I'd say 3 to 5 probably is a good chance before the end of this month, and then just continuing on in January, like you said. So it's also tied to BRICS, right? So you see Iraq tied it to their central banks already. You put out articles, we put out our articles, others have. So yeah, that's somewhat of a constancy. But they were also on 60 Minutes last night. I don't know if you saw
Yeah.
Brad Garlinghouse. And I know a lot of people think that interview was a swing in the miss, but what they need to understand is it wasn't so much about the deep state, trying to paint them in a bad light. It's the fact that they're now coming optically back to the media question earlier that you posed. Kind of, you could tie it back into that. The fact that the evil factions of the mainstream or the fake news, whatever, is talking about a legitimacy or even trying to downplay XRP. The fact that having to mention Ripple, mention Garlinghouse, and he was so cool under fire about it and so resolute because he knows he's got a decentralized, utility-backed coin that's going to do nothing but win, sets the stage for the public to know, hey, this is going to be a tour de force, for quite some time. And then this just came up, Holly, on our feed. If I just read this to you real quick before your next question. This is from Ariel, somebody that everybody knows, and like him or not, he's put out a lot of bombs in the past. Tomorrow could be one for the history books because, of course, many know that the Supreme Court is scheduled to issue a final decision this year at 10 a.m. But also on Iraq Victory Day, which is tomorrow the 10th, they're supposed to be opening up the new CBI headquarters. I believe that's the big major building. It's supposed to be one of the largest buildings in the Middle East, bigger than the ones in Dubai. Will a reinstatement of their current accompany this historic occasion? We'll see as we're hours away, because remember, they're 10 hours ahead of us, I believe, something like that. And what could change the world forever as the system is uprooted from its well-planted claws into our lives. We'll see what tomorrow has in store for us. So I think the timing of this broadcast is seminal because based on what we talked about earlier, tomorrow is supposed to be Victory Day. So does that mean for sure that they're going to put in the Gazette tomorrow or publish it and announce it? No, but it definitely, they have pressure on them. I think people need to remember, Holly, that you've got Trump, you've got Putin and Xi all have memorandums of understanding that they want to get paid on this. And so you've got the big three superpowers pushing hard on Sudani to get this done, right? And it would also not surprise us that a body who's been working with the citizens in the green zone, a former PM who didn't get it done, said he was going to risk his life for them, didn't do it, feels bad, wants to make some level of atonement, is we have confirmed is working in some capacity with Sudani to help kind of push this over the line. So I know it was a long-winded answer. I apologize, but I wanted to get the
That's
details
okay.
out.
So I had heard, and maybe you can collaborate with this, that Iraq is done. Everything has been done. They are stalling because they are waiting for the US to come out with our new USN notes. And because the US hasn't done what they're supposed to do, they're stalling on doing their end because they don't trust the US. So I don't know if you've heard that, but that's what I hear in my circles.
I've heard that. You look at what President Trump said last week, which we've touched on our podcast with other guests. That it's a noteworthy point. He said, Trump speaks in comms. We know, right? Like a good example would be with cryptos. I'm against crypto 9 months a year ago. I'm against cryptos, and all of a sudden now I want to be your crypto Bitcoin president.
Right.
So he's drawing people out on the bad side, but he always has his real intentions that come after the fact. Similarly, with the currencies and the note, which is why I bring this up, he said, if you devalue the dollar, I'm going to put 100% tariffs, knowing that he's part of BRICS,
Mhm.
knowing that the sanctions and tariffs have no ill effect on the BRICS because they're like the XRP of the currency world. They sit outside the jurisdiction. He's not talking about the US dollar. He's talking about the Federal Reserve dollar,
Mhm.
right? What we think he's going to do, because he's been doing it, is print the crap out of the Federal Reserve note and pull it out of circulation because it doesn't have any worth now. And
Right.
nobody, I think, really, no one who's really, and certainly our community, I would think even the mainstream society, watching hyperinflation of food and gas and insurance and other things, has little to no confidence in the dollar. Alongside that, we expect him to print those US Treasury backed notes to introduce it as a segue to the whole of society. So I think it's really a double speak message inside of that. But I agree with you. I think Iraq is done. I think they're following the constitutional patterns like Trump has done with following laws and orders, right? She had
Mhm.
Derek Johnson on who talks intricately about that. And so in that same vein, I think they're just following the constitutional orders to do it a certain way. But I don't necessarily think the dollar is the main holdup. I think it's just they have a timing and a way that they want to do this to create maximum effect, whatever that might be. So, but yeah, they don't trust them. They don't have confidence in the dollar either. So we have
Right.
heard most of that.
Right. So the other thing, there was something I was reading today that the green light's been pushed, the button's been given, and that is not true. So when people put this stuff out, it just creates a lot of false hope for
Mm-hmm.
people. There's not going to be a major announcement when it goes. It's just going to go very quietly. As you and I have said, it's
Yeah.
nobody's going to have that insider that, oh my God, the button's pushed and it's done. We still are waiting for the release codes to be entered. They're not entered. There's a series of release codes that have to go in. And it just creates, for me, so many people message me, as I'm sure they do you, oh, somebody's saying the green light's been given. It's not
Mhm.
been given yet. So everybody needs to wait. We're still not quite there yet.
Yeah. I mean, it's in simple parlance, Holly, it's not done till it's done.
Correct.
But I don't think it's the things that people think it is that are holding it up. I think it's just simply a timing issue. They have a time that they want to do this. They know when that's going to be. I go back to what I said with Sudani. That's solid. You can look it up. He said, we're getting rid of the currency auctions before the end of the year. And that's pretty much where we are. So
Right.
I think the timing's interesting. We sit on this second week of December, and I just read Ariel's post, right, about Victory Day, and that can, Victory Day can have many connotations to it, right? So I don't want to, speculate on what that could be, but I think it's interesting that they're getting it done, I think, well before Christmas. And then it's just a question of how they roll it out. And we'll all know. It'll all be over it'll be official over the internet. We'll all have a way to know. I did
Yes, absolutely.
wanted to ask you a question real quick, if I may.
Yeah.
Did you see the article about, I think we put on our channel last week or over the weekend, a bank I had not heard of actually. There's so many of them. Huntington Bank. I
Mhm.
know there's locations in Indiana, West Virginia. I have a friend
Yep.
who on our team who lives in West Virginia and was querying his office at Huntington Bank, talking to a branch manager. But you heard about how XRP was discussed, and that this is the first time that they're meeting with large transactions of dinar and dong. And so I was just
Yeah.
wondering what your impressions and takeaways were with that story.
I have a good friend that had found the Huntington Bank in his Pennsylvania area, and he was very excited when he found that. So they are also selling the Iraqi dinar, and that came out several weeks, if not over a month ago, that they were doing that. So it was one of the few banks that were starting to sell it. So that was a really good sign that they're gearing up for something, and that tying in with the cryptos. Well, the blockchain technology of XRP is the basis for the whole new financial system. Every country, every banking system is going to be linked and tied into that. So, if people don't understand the significance of XRP, XLM, XDC, it is huge. This is like a a company coming out that's in its infancy. And people would be like, oh, if I had known back then to invest. Well, you're getting, the red carpet rolled out to invest in this. This is going to be huge. Like this is tying everything into the new system. So it's a big deal.
Absolutely, there's no question, except that having worked for a company that dealt with .com, quote companies back in '01, this is actually substantive and built on something real, on a utility with hard
Yes,
assets instead of a false facade like a lot of those .com companies where we're just throwing, fictitious money around.
exactly.
This is going to, we believe, supplant Bitcoin in the not too distant future.
Absolutely. I
So
agree with
that was
you.
nothing I was going to ask you about. So
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. So do you have anything else that you want to add to what we've talked about, um, to wrap up global economic, financial, anything where we're at?
I mean, the one thing I would ask you and would discuss with you is the discussion of there are some camps that feel that nothing will change until the corrupt proxies in Iraq through the Iranian government in parliament are shaken out, and the militias. But I think that President Trump is already taking steps with the military. There's already a timeline to pull the troops out, and it's not going to take till the end of next year or anything like that. They're already going. But I think the Assad thing with Syria is a huge move, as I
Mhm.
said before, in underscoring the importance of how that benefits Iraq and the whole of the Middle East for that matter, in the terms of that issue of remediating and removing the corruption that allows this flow to happen
Right.
without any more interference. And I was just wondering, from what your purview of relationships is concerned, if that's sort of ringing true with what you see as well.
That is definitely ringing true with what I'm seeing. Um, Corruption is going to end. We're going to be living in a transparent world and banking system. We're not going to have all these backdoor dealings and
Mhm.
all the shady stuff that's going on. It's going to be transparent. It's going to be fair. It's going to be equitable, and we're no longer going to keep people suppressed or countries suppressed. Everybody's going to be on a level playing field, and Trump talked about that years ago.
2017. Yep.
Yes, that he wants to make everybody on a level playing field. It's not been fair what's been done. There's the everybody's familiar with the book and of Economic Hitman, that if
Mhm.
these countries did not go around and do what the US strong arm wanted, well, they would just go in and decimate their economies and take out their leaders and put in who they want. That's no longer going to happen. It's going to be a fair, equal playing field for everybody.
Absolutely. Oh, Holly, I just thought of the name, the journalist Chuck Scarborough.
Oh,
From
okay. Yep.
MSNBC. Sorry, it just came to my mind. I didn't want to forget. I think last week he just stepped down. So I don't know if you're familiar, maybe we talked about, I do a weekly wrap up where we talk about deaths and resignations and the latest headlines and stock, gold,
Right.
silver, that, oil, that kind of stuff, just to give everybody sort of a quick summary of the week's events. And so I would say on the backs of that with Chuck Scarborough, one thing that might help the audience is as sort of a point of interest or contact would be to add to the discussion of your question, looking at the resignations of a lot of these CEOs and CFOs from every vertical that you can think of, from automotive to retail to aerospace. You see the removal of DEI from Boeing. You see them continuing to have job hemorrhages. So you're seeing gutting and summarily CEOs, in some cases, have only been with their company for 1 or 2 years, which is very unusual in and of itself. They're stepping down, and we tie that back to the OFAC list, which I've shown you before, the Office of Foreign Control Assets, the Treasury legal financial cops, and it's 2,822 pages plus of arrests and seizures of assets, which Trump has highlighted. So I think that's another encode of the cabal of this end of this season and this transition of the new season, dovetailing it, of fairness, transparency, real assets, real money,
Right.
real conversations. And so I would think that's something noteworthy to contribute to your question and discussion, and would lead me to a last question that I think our audience would benefit greatly from you and your musings on, which is, from a geopolitical standpoint, a lot of people in my family and maybe in your family, I know you deal with this. We know the truth, but our families don't know it. They've got years of inculcation, or they're watching the fake news tell them this from years of inculcation. When do you and your team presuppose that the truth is going to start coming out to people? Do you see it being right out of the gate in January? Or do you seeing it kind of, you know, systematically coming out?
I think it's going to systematically start coming out in January. I
Yeah.
cannot wait for the disclosure videos.
Yeah.
That's going to be the big aha moment for everybody. But there's going to be people that won't believe that. They're going to feel kind of like it was a coup, or, something, this isn't truth. This is just fake stuff being put out. There will
Mhm.
be people in shock and awe. They won't be able to handle the truth. So I
Yeah.
think that's why they've been slowly dripping. Really, since Trump came into office in 2016, it's been a slow drip on information. There's been more and more and more about what the real evil does behind the scenes. And the biggest thing is the child trafficking,
Yeah.
that, most people have a hard time believing that that's real, that does exist.
Mm.
But I had done a podcast with a gentleman who sells Root Line Coffee. That's the name of the company. And that their coffee brand does rescue of child trafficked children. And all of their proceeds goes to rescuing them and rehabilitating them. But the thing that most people don't realize is, as he was saying, a drug is used once, one and done. A child can be trafficked, up to 18 times a day, every single day. And, it's horrible. It is a horror that's so hard to fathom. But I won't go into the details that he was talking about. But if everybody would like to contribute to Root Line Coffee, if you got 3 bags of the coffee, it saves a child. If you did a subscription, they need 3,000 subscriptions by the end of this month to keep their doors open. So I would highly encourage everybody to go Root Line Coffee and purchase 3 bags. I know I purchased a bunch as Christmas gifts. What a better gift to give, knowing you're rescuing a child, saving
Mm,
a life, than giving some frivolous gift.
that's a really worthwhile and erstwhile cause. Thank you. And I'll make sure that we obviously people see this. We'll put that link for you in the description so we can get that awareness out to people. One other quick thing I was thinking about, it's an aside, but it's important. The med beds, Mr. Poole, who has been accurate in the past with certain things. I mean, no one's 100%, of course, but I think he's been more right than wrong. Was putting out a timeline of the med bed sort of rollout going from, I think, January 27th, the week after Trump is inaugurated at present date, through February 3rd. And I just wanted to see if you'd seen that and if your team has any sort of impressions on that.
I have seen that, and I know people that are involved in that, and they are prepping and preparing for it. Again, those will not come out until the announcements of, the RV, that those come after, which is part of NESRA, GESERA.
Mhm.
And I really do believe we're waiting for Trump to be in office for those to come out and for all of
Yeah.
that to start rolling out. But
Yeah.
I am told that they are already in place and being set up and established and ready to go.
Yeah, that rings true with what we're hearing, that the military is sort of, he's commander in chief through them, so they're just waiting on his signal
Yes.
to release them, and there is a specific timing, but we are hearing that it will be sooner than later than people
Mhm.
anticipate. And yeah, so that's good to hear. I'm glad to hear you say that.
Yes.
Where can well, last thoughts you have, and where can people find your work?
So I have obviously the YouTube channel at Holly Celiano, and I have my Telegram rooms where we go all room 4 and room 2,
Okay.
so they can find me there. And then you and I share stuff back and forth. So if you
Oh yeah. Yep.
you can get each other through our mutual associations.
And I did share that, thank you for bringing it up. I did share that post that you had with the gentleman about the
Mhm.
trafficking. I posted that, I think, over the Friday, when you, Thursday or
Yeah,
Friday, when you sent it to me. So you
thank
folks
you.
can, yeah, sure. You folks can reference that in regards to the trafficking and the coffee opportunity to help said victims, which still is
Yeah.
hard to digest mentally still, even after all this time. It's hard. Anyway, folks, we'll leave that in the description. And just to let you know, we do have a new sponsor, Orion Metal Exchange. And by supporting the sponsor, you're supporting the podcast so we can keep getting this information out in a timely manner. So, America, listen up. If you are tired of watching the government gamble with your hard earned retirement savings, inflation's out of control, the national debt keeps climbing, and foreign powers like BRICS and illegal immigration are pushing the US dollar weaker, as well as the cost of goods higher every day. But here's the kicker: during Trump's first term, gold prices skyrocketed, which doubled in value. Yes, gold doubled. What if it happens again? Are your retirement savings ready to handle what's coming? This is why you need Orion Metal Exchange. They're America's highest rated precious metals IRA by Retirement Living, and they give you more metal for your money. Imagine converting your IRA or 401k into gold and silver, real physical wealth that you can count on no matter what. And don't wait until it's too late. Take control of your future today by calling Orion Metal Exchange now at 888-378-1426 and get your free investor's guide. It's packed with the information that you need to protect your retirement savings. You've worked too hard to leave your future to chance. So call 800-378-1426 and do it now. Orion Metal Exchange is here to help you secure your wealth and stand strong as a proud conservative American. And remember, past performance does not guarantee future results. There's always a risk of investment, and there's no guarantees of any kind. Ms. Holly Celiano, great to see you again, my dear. As always, from all of us to all of you, have a very Merry Christmas, Happy New Year with your family. You certainly got your hands full,
Yes, I
and
do.
we'll look forward to talking with you in the new year.
Okay. Thank you. Bye, everybody.
God bless.